A corrupt officer will be provided free advocate by the government. And if the citizen is not able to prove his complaint, there is minimum 2 years imprisonment against him. But if he proves the complaint that the officer is corrupt, then there's just 6 months of punishment against the corrupt officer. So friends, this Lokpal bill drafted by the government is basically to target the people who are fighting against corruption. It is not meant to target the corrupt and corruption in the government. It is meant to target those people who dare raise their voice against corruption. As soon as you make a complaint to the Lokpal, or as soon as you make a complaint to any anti-corruption agency, immediately you are targeted. You are threatened. You are victimized. In the last 1 year, 13 RTI activists have been murdered all across the country. The people who dared to file an RTI application to get information from the government. In Jan Lokpal bill, we had suggested that the Lokpal should have a duty to provide protection to such people. The government has not accepted that proposal. So there is no protection of whistleblowers. When we told all this to the government said there are 1.25 crore government employees all across the country. You would need such a huge force of people to keep a check on their corruption. So when the government came to power, they should have realized that they are actually taking the reins of power of a country which is very huge. If there are 1.25, अगर 1.25 crore employees इस देश में हैं, तो उनको खुला नहीं छोड़ सकते रिश्वतखोरी करने के लिए. You have to provide adequate systems in this country. You have to provide. Corruption is a crime. Under law, corruption is a crime. As heinous as murder, as heinous as rape. It is written in the law. So if tomorrow the incidence of murder or incidence of rape goes as much as we have corruption today, will this government turn around and say that we can't provide protection to all of you because there are 120 crore people in this country? What kind of a logic is this, that because there are 1.25 crore people, therefore we can't keep a check on them? Therefore we have provided a Lokpal which will keep a check on only a very small band of and we'll let loose all the rest of the officers to loot this country. CBI is completely in the clutches of the government. We all know how CBI has been used and misused by all successive governments. Bank account of Kothrochi was defrozen in complete secrecy against public interest because he happens to be close to someone very senior in power. Because CBI is directly in the control of the government. For 1 full year, no action was taken against Raja, because Raja was one of the central government ministers. It is only when Supreme Court, the case was filed in Supreme Court, that the CBI started functioning. In future also, CBI will continue not taking any action against any Raja. CBI will continue not taking any action against any Kanmadi, because CBI will continue to report to the very same people who are accused in all these cases. The selection of Lokpal. The government has suggested a 9-member committee, out of which 5 of them will be their own people. So effectively they will appoint politically loyal and most corrupt people as Lokpals. The removal of Lokpal. We had suggested that any citizen should be able to make a complaint to the Supreme Court seeking removal of the Lokpal if he feels that he has evidence of corruption against a Lokpal member. The government has written in the law that only government can make a complaint to the Supreme Court, not the citizens. So the government in effect has a control over the selection of Lokpal, they have a control over the removal of Lokpal, and they have a control over the budget of Lokpal, and they have control over the functioning of Lokpal. So just like CBI, Lokpal will also be a puppet in the hands of the central government. Should Prime Minister be included in Lokpal? It is being said that Prime Minister sits over very sensitive matters and it would endanger our democracy, or it would endanger our country if Prime Minister were brought under the purview of Lokpal. Friends, I dread if tomorrow Madhu Koda becomes the Prime Minister of this country, and it is very likely. In this coalition era, Madhu Koda could very well become the Prime Minister of this country, and the security of this country would be threatened, because he will sell the security of the country. Prime Minister is privy to so much of security related information. So in my opinion, Prime Minister is the first person who should be brought under the purview of Lokpal. Secondly, keeping Prime Minister out of Lokpal is unconstitutional, because in our constitution only and only President of India enjoys complete immunity from any kind of investigation. No such immunity has been granted to the Prime Minister. So if Prime Minister is kept out of Lokpal, this law can be easily challenged in the Supreme Court as an unconstitutional law. Should judiciary be brought under Lokpal? The government says that we are bringing a judicial accountability bill, and you will laugh to read the provisions of the judicial accountability bill. The judicial accountability bill says that if there is an allegation of corruption against a judge, suppose there is an allegation of corruption against a Delhi High Court judge, then 3 judges of Delhi High Court would decide whether to register an FIR against that judge or not. Now the judges with whom you have lunch every day, the judges with whom you sit on the bench every day, those 3 judges committee is supposed to decide whether to file an FIR against their brother judge or not. Is this going to work? This is the kind of judicial accountability bill that they're proposing. We have been demanding that judicial accountability should be to a completely independent agency. All that we are asking for, we are not saying anything else, all that we are asking for, that if today, the system that exists today is that if any judge indulges in any corruption, you cannot even register an FIR against him till you seek the permission of the Chief Justice of India. And in the last 20 years, there have been so many allegations of corruption against so many judges in the country, but none of the Chief Justices of India gave any permission against any judge. It is only in the last 2 years that permission were given only in 2 cases, in Nirmala Yadav case and in the PF scam case. No other Chief Justice of India, including very honest Chief Justices of India, have given permission to even register an FIR against their brother judges. There is so much of collusion amongst them. All that we have been saying is, rather than the Chief Justice of India giving permission, the permission to register an FIR should be given by a 7-member bench of Lokpal in an open hearing. But again, they have not included that. Judiciary has been kept completely out of Lokpal. One interesting question, one of the girls during the debate said that Mr. Kapil Sibal is saying right when he says that Lokpal will be a parallel government. An impression is being given that anything which is not in the control of the government is a parallel government. That is not right. In any democracy, as it was discussed, we have judiciary, we have legislature, and we have executive. And executive has all the powers, all the executive powers. It is almost like a superpower. So in order to keep a check on executive, we created several independent bodies. So therefore we created a judiciary to keep a check on arbitrariness, injustice and corruption of the executive. We created judiciary, which is not in the control of the executive. So is judiciary a parallel government? We have CAG, Controller and Auditor General. Is CAG a parallel government? We have NHRC, which is independent of the government. Is NHRC a parallel government? We have Central Vigilance Commission, which is independent of the government. Is CVC a parallel government? We have Central Information Commission, which is independent of the government. Is CIC a parallel government? We have so many other agencies which are completely independent of the government. They are not parallel governments. Likewise, Lokpal will also be independent of the government. How will that become a parallel government? So Kapil Sibal is misleading the whole nation. Another word that is being thrown is Lokpal is a Frankenstein monster. It will come and sit on everyone's head. It's not like that. An ordinary income tax officer, Group B officer, an ordinary income tax officer has the power to examine the income tax return of Dr. Manmohan Singh. He can impose taxes on Dr. Manmohan Singh and he can impose a penalty on Dr. Manmohan Singh. An ordinary income tax officer has the power to examine the income tax return of the Chief Justice of India, impose taxes on him, impose penalty on him. An ordinary income tax officer has the power to examine the income tax returns of all the members of parliament, all the ministers, all the officers. Does this mean that income tax officer sits on the heads of everyone? He does not.